But then you went to, you were then, I think you went to America to Rajneesh Ashram for a time, didn't you, after Medina?
Well, there was this woman called Sheila.
Sheila was Bhagwan Rajneesh's right-hand woman, so to speak.
Yep.
Who was quite firm in her
she was
interpretation of things.
Quite firm, yes, quite clear in her own particular way. And I was told, look, you're going to have to... I had been backward and forward to Rajneesh Ashram a few times by then, but I was told to come out, and I went out, and she said, we're going to keep you here. Bhagwan doesn't want you to go back to Medina. Medina was your ego trip, and it's time to finish your ego trip and be here now with the master.
That was hard.
That was a bit tough, and I thought, well, I don't know everything in this world, and that's the other thing. You have to come back to yourself and think, well, is this right for me? Yeah. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge that part of you that does have an ego and is unconscious and is programmed and hasn't got rid of that programming.
So the part of you
yet.
that wants to grow is stronger than the part that's questioning, is this right?
The part of me that, well, I have to just tell you what happened. I did stay there. And Medina, in fact, subsequently was completely demolished because she sent somebody else over who crucified it, and it all ended. Yeah. So this beautiful thing that I really had been a part of creating, and a whole lot of us very inspired people, the other ones I mean, totally apart from me, had created, was just wrecked. It was as if she wanted to sabotage it. And I feel... anyway, that was what happened. And so I was put to work in all kinds of awful things. I was crawling around under townhouses, putting tarpaulin underneath them. And I've still got a cranky elbow, actually, from hammering nails. I've never done a day's physical work in my life. And I stayed there, and then I began to see that something wasn't right there. And I was watching it more and more, and there were people coming in who were brought in called the homeless people.
Yes.
And I don't want to go too much into detail. 3,000 people were brought in, and then they were suddenly shipped out. The reason they were brought in was because Sheila conceived this master plan of having all these people come in so that the votes of our ashram would outdo the voting power of the county around. I can't remember what the county around was anyway. It didn't work because it turned out you had to be resident in the county for so long, and none of these homeless people had been resident long enough. And they were nice people that we'd gone out and picked up off the streets, and I did quite a bit of work with them. Anyway, the result of it was that they were sent away because they were useless to the ashram now, and I was one of the people helping them. I was going through their cases, actually, to take anything away from them that they'd been given in the ashram. Yeah. And I had a moment then of thinking, I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't trust this. I don't trust that suddenly there are guns and there's an armoured car, and that that...
That's right, because everywhere he was going,
there were
armed guards.
Armed guards. Yeah. And one day I was asked to walk beside the car, which was supposed to be a great honour. And he always had a soft spot for me, Bhagwan. Even when I was the lowest of the low, I always found myself on celebration days sitting in the front row because he always wanted me to be there. But Sheila and the politics around.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But he knew about the politics. He couldn't miss these guns. I mean, he was saying yes to them.
Yeah.
So I decided to leave.
Yes.
And I told him I was going to leave. I sent a message, I'm going to leave. And a message came back saying, this is just your ego, don't leave now. Wait a while and just settle down because it's just your ego. But I didn't. I stayed another 2 weeks, I think. And then I said, I'm really going now. And Tirtha, Paul, said, oh, this is your ego, you should be staying. And so I said to the kids, look, I'm going. Do you want to stay with your father or do you want to come with me? And they said, well, we'll come with you. And off we left. We went. And I, very soon after that, really stopped being a sannyasin.
You came back to London then, did you?
I came back to London, yes. And I was quite it's very shortly after I left, the shit hit the fan, basically, because everything went up. Sheila was arrested, or she fled the country.
Well, he was arrested.
He was arrested. Yeah. But I'd already left by that time.
Yeah.
And then, after he got back to Pune, he sent a message to me to say, would I start Medina again? And he said, in the message, he said, it wasn't, I realise now that Medina was beautiful and that Sheila wanted to destroy you and destroy Medina. And I wrote back an open letter to the newspaper at the time saying, you knew all this. You can't blame it on Sheila.
Yeah.
You are responsible for this. And I was then excommunicated, which took the path I wanted anyway.
And then you were in London and you were working with people with AIDS, was that right, or am I jumping something?
I think you're jumping, but it doesn't really matter. We can jump. If we went through every detail, it would be ridiculous. I decided I really wanted to work, wasn't with HIV actually at first, it was, I wanted to work with people who were dying, because I felt that that was something that I wanted more exposure to.
Quite, I actually remember this, but you had because everybody that was a sannyasin at the time had to have an AIDS test. And you had an AIDS test, and you were positive for HIV.
I was tested positive,
and you thought for a few weeks you had
I thought
HIV.
I had HIV, yes.
And I remember sitting in your kitchen, I don't know why I was there, but sitting in your kitchen when there was a phone call came through from the doctor at Medina, or whoever it was, the doctor, saying, actually the first test was wrong, and you're HIV negative. And there was this kind of incredible dawning that actually you hadn't got this, at that time was a terminal disease. Actually you were okay.
That was what gave me my first wanting to work with HIV.
So you must have realised what it was like to possibly have AIDS. You didn't have the physical symptoms, but you had the mental.
I knew what it was like to be told I had a terminal illness. And in those days it was very early and the tests weren't.
That's correct.
And no one said to me, look, you know, we have to do some retesting here. No one said that. They just said, you've got it. And perhaps they didn't want to raise my hopes. I don't know why. And so my kids were shipped off to America, where Paul still was, to be with him, because it was seen that in those days it was so much ignorance that they could catch it from me in some way. Which is nonsense. They couldn't have done.
People didn't actually know the facts.
People didn't know. In fact, Bhagwan had got everybody wearing rubber gloves to have sex at that point. I mean, it was absurd. Anyway, I didn't have HIV, but it did give me an interest in it. And I spent 6 years working with people with HIV and AIDS, and it was a wonderful time for me to be with so many of the people I worked with, and to have that privilege, really, of working with people who had HIV, and a very special time, and also a time of a lot of change for me.